November 1943. The Eastern Front stretched endlessly, a frozen landscape scarred by the devastation of relentless warfare. Artillery fire shook the ground, and the wind carried the distant cries of soldiers struggling to survive. Amid the chaos, a young man moved cautiously through the snow, every step a calculated risk. His uniform was torn, his boots caked with mud, but he pressed on, driven by a determination that would carry him through the deadliest days of the war. Born in a small town, he had grown up hearing stories of courage and honor, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of the battlefield. The front lines were unforgiving. Ambushes, collapsing trenches, and sudden attacks were constant threats. Comrades fell around him, and every day demanded a careful balance between instinct and luck. In one battle, he found himself isolated behind enemy lines. Surrounded by hostile forces, he navigated through shattered villages and frozen forests, relying on a mixture of training, intuition, and sheer willpower. Hunger gnawed at him, frost biting his fingers and toes, but he kept moving, understanding that standing still was certain death. During the harsh winter of 1943, the front became a silent enemy of its own. Snow hid the remnants of fallen soldiers and the jagged remnants of shattered equipment. Visibility was minimal, and yet he had to make split-second decisions, choosing paths that could lead either to safety or to oblivion. Despite the relentless dangers, he endured. He witnessed acts of courage and desperation, the resilience of those who refused to surrender to fear. Each narrow escape, each battle survived, added to a growing story of survival against all odds. By the time spring arrived, he had faced situations that would have broken most men. Yet through injuries, loss, and the constant threat of death, he continued forward. His journey through the war became a testament not only to skill and strategy, but to an unyielding human will, the will to survive when everything around him seemed determined to end his life. He was born in the autumn of 1922, in a small industrial town surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests. The town had its share of hardships, hard-working families, long winters, and scarce opportunities. But it was a place where community mattered, and where stories of resilience were passed down from one generation to the next. His father had served in the First World War, returning home with both pride and scars, and his mother managed the household with quiet determination. From an early age, he learned the value of endurance, responsibility, and adaptability, lessons that would later shape his approach to survival. As a boy, he spent hours exploring the forests near his home, climbing trees and crossing streams, developing a sense of awareness and intuition about the natural world. He learned to observe, to anticipate danger, and to act decisively when necessary. These instincts, seemingly ordinary in youth, would become critical in the chaos of war. In school, he was neither the top student nor the most outspoken, but he displayed a sense of curiosity and problem-solving. He was attentive to details and quick to notice patterns, an ability that would later help him navigate battlefields and assess threats with precision. Sports and physical labor strengthened his body, while reading and listening to veteran stories prepared his mind for challenges far beyond childhood. By 1940, the war had reached every corner of Europe. Nations were mobilizing, and conscription became a reality for young men across the continent. At 18, he received his call to serve. The news brought a mixture of fear, determination, and a sense of duty inherited from his family. There was no room for hesitation. The world was changing rapidly, and his life would be irrevocably altered. Basic training began in harsh conditions. Early mornings, endless drills, and rigorous discipline shaped him into a soldier. He learned to handle weapons, navigate difficult terrain, and work in coordination with others under extreme stress. Discipline and routine became survival tools, teaching him not only how to obey orders, but how to adapt quickly when situations deviated from expectations. He witnessed the transformation of civilians into soldiers, young men who had never left their villages, now thrust into unimaginable circumstances. Bonds formed quickly, sometimes stronger than family ties, yet fragile under the weight of war. He observed fear, courage, and the quiet moments of reflection that punctuated the relentless pace of preparation for combat. By late 1942, he was deployed to the front lines. The forests, rivers, and hills he had once explored in childhood were now battlefields. The lessons of his youth, alertness, endurance, and decisiveness, would be tested daily. The soldier stepped into a world where survival depended not only on skill, but on instinct, luck, and the ability to act under pressure. It was a world that demanded constant vigilance. Every sound, every shadow, and every movement could signal life or death. Yet, the young man faced this reality with a quiet resolve, shaped by years of preparation, family influence, and a resilience that would carry him through the darkest days of the war. The cold of early January bit through the soldier's uniform as he moved cautiously along the edge of the forest. Snow covered the ground in thick, uneven layers, concealing the remnants of past skirmishes, discarded equipment, frozen footprints, and the silent bodies of those who had fallen before him. The wind howled through the trees, carrying the faint echoes of artillery fire from distant positions. Every sound was a warning, every shadow a potential threat. His unit had been ordered to secure a small village held by enemy forces. Intelligence reports suggested that resistance would be fierce, yet they had no choice but to advance. As they approached the outskirts, the first gunshots cracked through the air. Men dropped instantly, cries of pain mingling with the rhythm of gunfire. The soldier felt his pulse quicken. Training had prepared him for this moment, but nothing could simulate the chaos of real battle. He moved forward, rifle raised, scanning for signs of enemy movement. The snow beneath his boots was slippery, and the weight of his pack slowed him, but every step was deliberate. Ahead, a house had been partially destroyed, its roof collapsed, walls scarred by bullets. From behind it, enemy soldiers fired with relentless precision. One of his comrades fell to his side, and the soldier barely had time to react before another shot whistled past his ear. For hours, they fought inch by inch. The village became a maze of rubble and frozen streets, each corner concealing danger. He witnessed both courage and fear, men risking their lives to carry the wounded, others frozen in terror. Amid the chaos, he learned quickly to move silently, to anticipate enemy positions, and to conserve energy for the moments that truly mattered. At one point, he found himself separated from his unit, crouched behind a destroyed cart as bullets tore through the wooden beams around him. His breathing was heavy, hands numb, yet his mind remained sharp. He mapped the positions of the enemy in his head, noting their patterns and pauses. When a narrow opening appeared between two buildings, he seized it, sprinting across the street with a precision born of necessity, barely escaping a burst of gunfire. Hours turned into a nightmarish blur. He carried a wounded comrade to relative safety, dodged mortar fire, and crawled through snowdrifts to avoid detection. Each decision was a balance between instinct and calculation. Small mistakes could, and often did, result in death. Yet he persisted, driven by determination, training, and the stubborn refusal to succumb. By the end of the day, the village had been partially secured. Casualties were high, and the soldier, though exhausted and shaken, had survived. He had witnessed horrors he would never forget. Friends falling beside him, civilians caught in crossfire, the relentless destruction of what little life had existed in the village before the war. Yet he had also discovered something vital about himself, an ability to endure, to make decisions under extreme pressure, and to survive in conditions that would have claimed most men. The experience left him physically drained and emotionally altered. Every step he had taken, every shot fired, and every near miss had tested him in ways that textbooks could not describe. Yet within this crucible of fire and blood, he had learned the essence of survival: patience, observation, decisiveness, and the will to keep moving, no matter the odds. Over the next several weeks, the lessons of this first battle would shape him. He became acutely aware of the importance of terrain, the value of allies, and the randomness of war. Some days he would escape unharmed. Others, he would witness tragedies that would haunt him for years. But through it all, he survived, each encounter building the foundation for the extraordinary resilience that would define the rest of his journey through the war. The first battle was only the beginning. The soldier had been tested in ways few could imagine, yet the war still stretched endlessly ahead. Each victory was temporary, each moment of safety fragile, and every decision carried the weight of life and death. He had survived his initiation into the brutal reality of combat, and in doing so, had taken the first step toward defying the impossible odds that awaited him. Winter deepened across the Eastern Front, bringing with it not only snow and ice, but relentless hardship for those who fought in its frozen expanse. The soldier moved cautiously through the barren landscape, each step sapping energy from his weary body. The village he had helped secure weeks earlier now lay deserted, its streets scarred by artillery, its buildings half collapsed and lifeless. The cold was unforgiving, gnawing at exposed skin and chilling bones through even the thickest layers of uniform. It was during one patrol that he first encountered the full weight of his physical limits. A sudden artillery strike shook the ground, and debris struck him across the shoulder and leg. Pain exploded through his body, and blood quickly soaked his uniform. Despite the injuries, he forced himself to move, dragging a wounded comrade to cover as another shell fell nearby. Every breath was a battle. Every movement required deliberate effort. He realized in that moment that survival was not about avoiding injury. It was about enduring it. Days turned into nights of cold, hunger, and exhaustion. Food supplies were scarce, and the rations they received were barely sufficient to maintain energy. Frostbite began to claim fingers and toes, forcing him to improvise with layered clothing and constant movement. Sleep was a rare commodity, often snatched in moments of brief shelter, while the distant sounds of battle served as a constant reminder that safety was temporary. Illness began to spread among the men. Respiratory infections, frostbite, and malnutrition weakened the unit. He watched comrades fall ill, their strength fading rapidly, and sometimes he feared he would be next. Yet he pushed on, driven by necessity and an instinctual understanding that stagnation would be fatal. The body could endure much if the mind remained focused. The soldier endured close encounters with death on multiple occasions. Once, during a reconnaissance mission, he became trapped behind enemy lines in freezing conditions. Exhaustion and disorientation threatened to overwhelm him, but he relied on memory, observation, and sheer determination to navigate back to friendly positions. Each successful return strengthened his confidence, yet also reminded him how fragile life was in the face of war. Injuries compounded the daily struggle. Shrapnel wounds, bruises, and the constant aches from marching long distances over frozen terrain became routine. Medical attention was often minimal. The field medics worked tirelessly, but the volume of casualties exceeded their capacity. Survival meant improvising bandages, rationing energy, and learning to move despite pain. He learned to recognize the early signs of infection, the subtleties of exhaustion, and the importance of protecting every inch of exposed skin against frost. Amid these hardships, morale was fragile. Men argued, despaired, and sometimes broke under pressure. The soldier found strength not only in training, but in small rituals, writing letters to family, sharing stories with comrades, and holding on to fleeting moments of humor. Human connection became as vital as food or ammunition, a reminder that survival was as much mental as physical. There were nights when he lay awake, shivering beneath thin blankets, listening to the distant sounds of artillery and the moans of the wounded. Each night was a test of endurance. Sleep, when it came, was shallow and restless. Yet it was a reprieve from the endless vigilance required during waking hours. Hunger gnawed at his stomach constantly, but he learned to ration, to eat sparingly, and to prioritize energy for survival tasks. Psychological hardships matched the physical. Witnessing death, loss, and destruction became routine. He saw friends killed in moments of carelessness, civilians trapped in crossfire, and the merciless toll of artillery on anyone caught in its radius. The war demanded not only resilience of the body, but fortitude of the mind. He learned to compartmentalize fear, to suppress panic, and to act decisively even when overwhelmed. Despite these trials, the soldier endured. Each injury, each frost-bitten finger, each sleepless night was a lesson in perseverance. He developed a keen awareness of his own limits, understanding when to push forward and when to conserve energy. Adaptation became instinctive. How to navigate the terrain, how to respond to enemy movements, how to survive on minimal resources. By spring, the soldier had transformed. His body bore scars, his mind carried memories of suffering. Yet he remained among the living where many others had fallen. The hardships had refined his skills, strengthened his resolve, and prepared him for the battles yet to come. Survival was no longer merely a matter of chance. It had become a matter of learned endurance, careful observation, and relentless willpower. Even in the bleakest moments, he discovered small victories. A successful maneuver, a comrade saved, a night spent out of the enemy's reach. These instances reinforced a simple truth. Survival was not a singular achievement, but the accumulation of countless small choices, decisions, and efforts sustained over time. Through injuries, illness, cold, and hunger, he endured. The battlefield was merciless, yet he moved forward, step by step, day by day. The soldier who had entered the war as an ordinary young man was beginning to emerge as someone extraordinary, not because he was invincible, but because he had learned to survive when others could not. The spring thaw brought no relief to the Eastern Front. Snow melted into mud, rivers swelled, and the once frozen landscape transformed into a treacherous quagmire. The soldier's unit was ordered forward again, this time to a strategic crossroads that could determine the fate of the surrounding region. Artillery fire echoed in the distance, a relentless reminder that no ground could be considered safe. The first engagement occurred at dawn. Enemy forces had fortified positions along a ridge overlooking the road, and every approach was under heavy fire. The soldier advanced with his comrades, moving from cover to cover, careful to avoid open stretches. Machine gun fire swept the snow-covered fields, striking with deadly precision. Each movement required focus, agility, and nerves of steel. He saw friends fall beside him, their lives ended in an instant by a single bullet. The landscape became a blur of smoke, mud, and chaos. Hours stretched into a day-long struggle. The unit pressed forward inch by inch, clearing trenches, storming buildings, and navigating narrow alleyways. Coordination was essential. One misstep could expose dozens to enemy fire. The soldier found himself repeatedly at the forefront, leading small squads into positions that had already cost many lives. Each successful advance was a small victory, yet it came at a heavy cost. During one particularly brutal encounter, the soldier's company was ambushed in a partially destroyed village. Enemy forces had laid traps and fortified positions, turning each street into a gauntlet. The soldier moved deliberately, covering the advance of others while exchanging fire with snipers hidden among rubble. Explosions threw debris into the air, and the cries of wounded men filled the streets. At one moment, he was thrown to the ground by a collapsing wall, pinned by rubble until comrades pulled him free. Blood, mud, and snow clung to his uniform, yet he continued to fight. The intensity of the battles demanded not only courage, but also strategy. He learned to read the terrain quickly, anticipate enemy movements, and coordinate attacks with precision. Every day, every decision had consequences. He discovered the value of improvisation, using debris for cover, exploiting enemy overconfidence, and moving silently when the element of surprise was critical. Morale was a fragile commodity. Men who had once laughed together now whispered in fear, weighed down by exhaustion, hunger, and the sight of fallen comrades. The soldier found solace in small routines, checking equipment meticulously, scouting ahead for danger, and assisting those who struggled to keep pace. These actions, though minor, contributed to the survival of the unit and reinforced a sense of purpose amid relentless violence. One of the most harrowing battles occurred during a river crossing. Enemy forces had fortified the opposite bank with machine guns and artillery. Soldiers waded into the freezing water under fire, struggling against the current while attempting to carry equipment and injured comrades. The soldier moved with calculated precision, helping those who faltered and neutralizing threats with careful shots. The river, which should have been a simple barrier, became a deadly obstacle, claiming the lives of many who underestimated its danger. By the end of the campaign, the soldier had survived engagements that would have broken lesser men. Entire units had been decimated, villages reduced to rubble, and the landscape marked with the scars of war. Yet through it all, he remained, his body battered and his spirit tested, but unbroken. Each battle honed his skills, sharpened his instincts, and reinforced the mental resilience that had become as crucial as physical endurance. During lulls in the fighting, he reflected on what had occurred, the randomness of survival, the bravery of his comrades, and the relentless march of conflict that spared few. Letters from home arrived sporadically, a reminder of life beyond the battlefield. Yet each piece of news was tempered by the awareness that the front remained perilous. The soldier began to notice patterns in the chaos, how weather affected enemy movements, the timing of patrols, and the ways in which chance could determine life or death. He adapted accordingly, anticipating dangers before they arrived and using every advantage to survive. These lessons, learned in blood and mud, would carry him through the war's deadliest months. By the summer, he had endured some of the largest and most intense battles of the conflict. Casualties were immense, yet the soldier continued, guided by a combination of experience, instinct, and an unyielding will to survive. He witnessed heroism and horror side by side, comrades risking everything to save others, civilians caught in the crossfire, and the sheer randomness of which lives were spared and which were lost. Through each engagement, the soldier became acutely aware that survival required more than courage. It demanded constant observation, adaptability, and a willingness to act decisively under pressure. He learned to measure risk, to act swiftly when opportunity presented itself, and to preserve energy and resources for critical moments. Every decision, no matter how small, could mean the difference between life and death. By the end of the summer campaign, the soldier had not only survived, but had emerged as a seasoned veteran. The battles had transformed him physically, mentally, and emotionally. Scarred and exhausted, he understood the cost of survival, the friends he had lost, the destruction he had witnessed, and the constant tension between hope and despair. Yet he also understood the strengths he had discovered within himself: resilience, intelligence, and an unshakable will to endure. The war would continue to test him, but the major battles of that summer had cemented a truth. Survival against all odds was possible, but only for those who combined courage with careful judgment, skill with intuition, and determination with adaptability. He had crossed the threshold from ordinary soldier to someone capable of enduring the unthinkable, and the challenges ahead would demand every ounce of the lessons he had learned in the mud, blood, and fire of the front lines. The war ended quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the early hours of May 1945. For the soldier, the moment was not marked by fanfare or celebration, but by a profound sense of relief and disorientation. The battles that had consumed months and years of his life suddenly ceased, leaving him alone with the memories of those who had fallen and the desolation that stretched across Europe. Returning home was a journey through landscapes scarred by conflict. Towns he remembered from childhood were reduced to rubble. Forests had been scarred by trenches and explosions, and the streets were littered with remnants of war: burned-out vehicles, abandoned weapons, and personal belongings scattered across the ground. Each step reminded him of the cost of survival, both in human life and in the physical world around him. He arrived in his hometown to a mixture of familiarity and estrangement. The houses, though still standing, bore the marks of conflict: windows shattered, roofs damaged, walls blackened by fire. Families who had survived emerged from their homes, their expressions a mixture of relief, grief, and tentative hope. The soldier was welcomed, yet he felt a profound distance from them, a sense that the man who had returned was not the same as the boy who had left. The personal toll of the war became immediately apparent. Friends and neighbors had perished, the routines of daily life were disrupted, and the physical and emotional scars of survival weighed heavily on him. Sleep did not come easily. Nightmares of battle, explosions, and lost comrades haunted him. The discipline and vigilance that had kept him alive in the front lines now intruded on the quiet of civilian life. Every shadow, every sudden sound, carried echoes of the past. Yet amid the challenges of readjustment, he began to find meaning in survival. Letters and photographs from comrades, memories of acts of courage, and small moments of triumph served as reminders that even in the darkest circumstances, endurance had value. He shared stories with younger generations, recounting not only the hardships, but also the lessons of strategy, observation, and resilience that had allowed him to live when so many others had not. Physical injuries lingered, a permanent reminder of the battles he had faced. Frostbite, shrapnel wounds, and chronic aches required ongoing care. Medical treatment was often limited, and recovery demanded patience and perseverance. Yet each healed wound, each regained strength, was a testament to the determination that had sustained him on the battlefield. Psychologically, the soldier grappled with a complex mixture of gratitude, guilt, and reflection. He survived, yet many of his closest friends did not. He struggled to reconcile the randomness of survival with the deliberate choices he had made. Every decision in combat had been critical, but some outcomes were beyond control. Over time, he learned to accept that survival was never solely a product of skill. It was a combination of preparation, instinct, luck, and the will to endure. He found purpose in rebuilding, in connecting with family, and in contributing to the recovery of his community. The skills honed during wartime, observation, strategy, resourcefulness, found new application in civilian life. The same determination that had carried him through the front lines now guided him through the challenges of reconstruction, employment, and personal growth. Looking back, he understood the enormity of what he had endured. The war had tested the limits of human endurance, but it had also revealed the capacity for resilience and courage in the face of overwhelming adversity. Survival was not simply a matter of escaping death. It was an ongoing process of adaptation, reflection, and growth. Even decades later, the memories remained vivid. The soldier spoke rarely of the horrors, but when he did, it was with precision and clarity, recounting the lessons learned from hardship, the value of preparation, and the enduring strength of human will. His story became more than a personal narrative. It was a testament to the extraordinary resilience possible in ordinary men when confronted with the most extreme circumstances. In the quiet moments, he reflected on the paradox of survival, that life could continue even after unimaginable suffering, that endurance could coexist with grief, and that memory could preserve the past while allowing for the rebuilding of a future. He had survived against all odds, and through his experience, he carried not only the scars of war, but also the knowledge that human resilience could triumph over even the most harrowing adversity. The soldier's journey through World War II was marked by relentless danger, unimaginable hardship, and the constant presence of death. From the frozen forests and shattered villages of the Eastern Front to the small moments of humanity and courage, he endured experiences that tested every aspect of his being. Survival, he learned, was never guaranteed. It was the result of careful observation, split-second decision-making, and the perseverance to keep moving even when every instinct told him to stop. It was shaped by training, experience, and the countless small choices that added up to life or death. Yet, it was also shaped by chance, the randomness of war that spared some and claimed others. In the years that followed, the soldier reflected on the lessons of survival. He carried the weight of lost comrades, the memory of battles that could have claimed him, and the knowledge that resilience is both a personal and shared journey. Life after the war demanded a different kind of courage. Rebuilding, finding purpose, and learning to live with memories that could never be erased. His story serves as a testament to human endurance. It reminds us that ordinary individuals are capable of extraordinary feats when confronted with circumstances that seem insurmountable. The soldier who survived against all odds demonstrates that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Even decades later, the echo of the battlefields remained in his mind. The sights, the sounds, the loss, and the survival shaped not only his life, but the understanding of those who heard his story. It is a reminder of the cost of conflict, the fragility of life, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The soldier's journey is more than a record of war. It is a story of resilience, adaptability, and the will to endure. It is proof that survival is not merely a matter of chance, but of determination, skill, and unwavering human courage. Against impossible odds, he survived, and in doing so, left a legacy that continues to inspire.